So 2020 happened. I'm sure we're all glad that year's behind us now. It's quite the year for social activism, politics, entertainment, stuff like that. One of the most interesting things that, at least in my opinion, that occurred that year was the NBA's bubble that occurred towards the middle of the year. Even if you didn't follow sports at the time, this was definitely something that you heard about in the news pretty much everywhere or on social media. Yeah, it seems like everything in 2020 was headline worthy, wasn't it? So the NBA bubble was quite the spectacle in the sports world, and for good reason. However, there have been ongoing debates as to whether or not the NBA bubble was credible, or if the championship that ensued at the end of the season should count or should be as worthy as compared to other previous years. Today, I'll be going over what the NBA bubble was, circumstances surrounding it, and two different arguments people have in regards to the championship and the bubble itself and its credibility. So first off, what exactly was the bubble? So the 2019-20 season for the NBA started off like any other in mid-October. However, talks of COVID-19, a new virus, everyone knows what that is. Talks of COVID-19 started around late December, early January. There wasn't really any major concern until maybe mid-February towards the beginning of March. And then in March 11th, 2020, the NBA decided to suspend its season after one of its players, Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz, tested positive before a game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And this report comes from ESPN News Services in 2020. So after the season was suspended, there was a couple months of just nothing. We didn't hear anything from the commissioner. There was complete silence. People were just like, what's going to happen next? Is the NBA over? Because no one knew where the pandemic was going. However, in July, around June or July of that year, there was a plan for 22 NBA teams to travel to a isolated bubble, is what they called it, in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And for this bubble, there was a 100-page rule book that was designed that had like rules and regulations for the players and staff that were living there, obviously. That comes from another ESPN article written by Brian Windhorst and Tim Bontemps in 2020, shortly after this report came out. So in this bubble, players would be tested for COVID every other day. They would stay in hotel rooms by themselves. No family was allowed, no spectators, and then player interactions were limited to only certain specified areas. And they were allowed access to most of Disney's entertainment options, including pools, golf courses, bicycles, gaming areas, bowling centers, ping pong tables, spa services, blah, blah, blah. And that all comes from NBC Sports, an NBC Sports article in 2020. And most importantly, masks were to be worn everywhere at all times, of course, except for when they were training or during games. So now that we have a basic understanding of what life was like in a bubble, I'd like to go over some arguments that people make against the bubble, that people have against the bubble, and the championship that resulted. So at the end of the season, the Los Angeles Lakers defeated the Miami Heat in 6 games of the NBA Finals. And one major argument that people have is that the Lakers' playoff matchups were too easy, and that they got lucky they didn't have to play the rival Los Angeles Clippers. That was like one of the main headlines going into the season. That was like going to be the main rivalry in the Western Conference. So what people forget is that in the regular season, the Lakers were by far the best team. They were the number one seed in the Western Conference for pretty much the entire season. According to basketballreference.com. Lakers were top 5 in defensive rating, opponent points per game allowed, and net rating. Those are just some nerdy numbers. And then I also provided this table right here, which also comes from Basketball Reference, which is even just provides a little more stats and data just to back up these claims that I have. You can see the ones that I circled are more categories that they were top 10, that the Lakers were top 10 in for that season. This is compared to the rest of the league. So to say that they played easy competition, or that they only saw success because they were in the bubble, shows how misinformed people are. If a team is really good, of course their matchups are going to be easy. So it doesn't make sense to discredit a team for their dominance. Another argument people have about the bubble is that it wasn't real basketball. What they mean by this is that because of the lack of crowds and the uncharacteristic games that we saw from certain players, that this part of the season wasn't realistic and shouldn't hold the same weight as other seasons. The NBA bubble, in my opinion, the NBA bubble is arguably one of the purest forms of basketball we've seen in recent years, or maybe in all time. No distractions, just pure ball for 4 months. The lack of crowds and teams not having home court advantage, as they say, meant that players were only worried about playing at their highest level. But why take my word for it when you can see several players have talked about this when asked in interviews about their thoughts on the NBA bubble? They've all said the same thing. So in an interview with Bleacher Report, NBA All-Star Jamal Murray, he was quoted by saying, "I think that was the highest level of basketball being played because it was only basketball and guys were so locked in. They go to the gym for shoot around, then you eat and you play. If you want a hobby, you just go to the gym. It's the only thing we were doing, and that for sure helped me because that's the kind of guy I am, to stay locked in and night out." So as we've learned today, the NBA bubble in the 2019-20 season, in which you saw the Los Angeles Lakers win the championship, many people want to discredit it or say that the bubble wasn't real, as I said earlier, and that the competition was just too easy or just wasn't real. However, these special circumstances allowed players to focus on just basketball, helping them play at much higher levels than we've ever seen before. And the Lakers are by far the best team in basketball before the league was suspended. Debates about this and other basketball topics are going to go on for years to come. But it's important to remember the facts and, most importantly, the opinions of the players themselves. Reddit users only have so much credibility. Thank you.